So Dana White's Contender Series is going to be back with week number 5 of 10 of the season, and this should be a very good card. I think there's going to be some pretty massive favorites on the card, though. I think the odds are going to be quite wide for at least a couple of these fights, because I do believe there are some fighters on this card that the UFC really does want to pick up and build, and I think the odds for those fights could potentially be quite wide, because I do think there are some favorable matchups for a lot of the fighters on this card. It is also worth noting, though, that the card has been shaken up quite a bit. We've had some short notice replacements as early as today, as I'm recording this. I am recording this on a Saturday in New Zealand right now. The cards take place on Wednesday for me, so quite a few days in advance. There's no odds for me to go off or anything. I'm just making assumptions who will and probably will be the favorite, but in the past I've been wrong. In the past I've picked people that are like plus 200 underdogs that I thought were going to be the favorite. I mean, you never know these things, obviously. I don't make my picks off odds despite popular belief, but anyway, it's been a pretty rough kind of year of Contender Series picks, though. I'm going to be honest. I mean, I think it is genuinely due to a combination of things. I think the main one is there are a couple of fights which have had a very bad read, and the fighters just weren't as good as I thought they were, or their opponent was better than I thought they were. But I think there is also a bunch of fights that have happened where the fighter that I've been researching, I've been saying that they're going to grapple, I'm saying that they're going to go for a takedown, and they just don't. They just go out there and strike. The most recent one was Mateo Vogel. In his last one, he lost that fight to Timothy Kawamba because he did not wrestle and grapple like he should have, man. That was a very good stylistic matchup for him to do, and if you watch that fight, and you were watching that fight, you would have seen he was nowhere near the kickboxer that Kawamba was, and he just didn't wrestle, he just didn't grapple, and it obviously cost him the fight. So anyway, now we can get into it. Before we do, you can get a 3-day free trial by signing up to wewantpicks.com/premium and signing up with the code ARSON. You get a 3-day free trial and you get access to all sorts of things on the premium content, and also I've got my BetUS link right there. Now let's get into the predictions. So kicking off the card, we're going to have Dione Barbosa taking on Rainn Guerrero, and this is one of the short notice replacements that I was talking about in the intro. Dione Barbosa, she has been fighting for LFA, and she hasn't really been fighting the best girls in LFA, a 1-1 opponent and a 5-6 opponent, but she has taken this fight on about a week's notice, and she's taken on Rainn Guerrero, who is quite well-rounded. Rainn Guerrero, for the most part, is a striker, but she does mix in takedowns quite often and also quite well. But I do feel like in this matchup, I think she would be better off to just keep the fight on the feet and maybe even be the one defending the takedowns and just trying to outstrike Dione Barbosa. Rainn Guerrero, her original opponent, was meant to be against Corinne Laframboise, and Corinne Laframboise was a pure grappler, and I feel like Dione Barbosa is also a pure grappler and is a very, very similar matchup. But the difference is I do believe that Corinne Laframboise was the better fighter in that matchup, and I do believe that Laframboise would have won that fight. I am going to go with Rainn Guerrero in this one, though. Now, Dione Barbosa, as I said, she kind of is a pure grappler. She is a grappler. That's kind of what she does. She wants to get this fight down to the ground. She doesn't have the best striking in the world. She hasn't really fought the best competition in the world. It's also worth noting, though, that Rainn Guerrero has not fought the best competition in the world either. But I do believe that what I've seen from Rainn Guerrero kind of tells me that I think that she should be able to win this fight. The problem with Rainn Guerrero, though, is one thing, though. She has found herself caught in submission attempts before. I believe it was this fight against Olivia Biscal, where she was caught in a lot of submission attempts by Olivia Biscal, but she was able to get it done using her hands, her striking, just landing more damage throughout the fight in that matchup there. She took on this girl called Christina Marks, who had a losing record, took her to a decision, but Rainn Guerrero, she is very impressive when she is the one going forward. She does kind of throw a lot of volume. Her striking isn't super technical. You kind of do have that typical, I don't really want to say it like this, but it is kind of the typical women's MMA where they are going forward, they are going aggressive, and they are kind of just throwing and hoping that something lands. That kind of is how Rainn Guerrero does strike. Dione Barbosa, she's a little bit less volume. I think she's the worst striker. I think Rainn Guerrero is going to make her very uncomfortable on the feet and win a fight that is going to be a striking matchup. I think that Guerrero would be very smart to keep this fight on the feet. I think she'd be very smart to avoid the grappling of Barbosa. So I'm going to go with Rainn Guerrero winning a decision in this matchup. Now we can move on to John Silva taking on Kevin Vallejos, and this fight is going to be absolutely ridiculous. John Silva is incredibly dangerous for as long as his gas tank does hold up, but thankfully for him, he's been finishing all of his opponents in the very first round. He has not seen a second round since 2018, and he's been knocking everybody out or submitting them in the very first round, and he has been looking very good doing it. The way that Gene Silva does fight is he kind of rushes forward and throws a lot of combinations, but he leaves himself quite hittable. His gas tank is an unknown because he hasn't been to the second round since 2018, but I have seen him slow down in fights where he has been extended, but this was a long time ago. I do believe, though, that Kevin Vallejos is the better and more technical striker, though. Kevin Vallejos, he works the body and the legs very, very well. Throws a lot of leg kicks, throws a lot of body kicks, and he does brawl a little bit. He can get hit at times because he is a counter striker. He can be caught waiting, but when he is in the pocket, he's got very, very good eyes in the pocket. He's got very good ability to kind of slip punches and throw back and land counter strikes himself. He is 11-0. He has been built up by this great promotion, Samurai Fight House 11, who is probably watching this video. So how's it going, Samurai Fight House 11 administrator? Fight House promotion, you know what I mean anyway. He hasn't really fought the best guys, but that's kind of what the Samurai Fight House promotion does. They do build up a lot of fighters, but his best win is over Eduardo Garagori. Now, Eduardo Garagori didn't have the best run in the UFC whatsoever, but when he did fight a couple decent guys like Ricardo Ramos and Darren Elkins. He actually has a win in the UFC as well, but you know, that's a really good win. I mean, Kevin Vallejos went out there, knocked him out in the second round. The best win of his career. A better win than anything that Gene Silva does have in this fight. I think that Kevin Vallejos does win this matchup. It's going to be dangerous, though, because as I said, Gene Silva, he is very, very aggressive. He is very active. He rushes forward. He throws combinations, but he does leave himself to be hit. He does leave himself to be kicked in the legs, and I think Kevin Vallejos, he's going to be a little bit more patient, or he needs to be patient. He's 21 years old, so you need to trust Kevin Vallejos to be patient in this matchup, because there is a good chance that he is going to get hurt. There is a good chance that he's going to get caught by Gene Silva, but I do believe that Kevin Vallejos wins this matchup. It is also worth noting, though, as well, that Kevin Vallejos doesn't have a lot of wrestling and grappling, so maybe Gene Silva could go for a takedown and maybe look to grapple with Kevin Vallejos, but I do believe that Vallejos is the better striker. He's the more technical striker, great eyes in the pocket, great counter striker. I think that he is going to be able to see a lot of what Gene Silva is going to be kind of bringing towards him when he rushes forward in his combinations, and I think that Vallejos is going to be able to get out of the way and finish Silva. I want to say first round, but I think that the fight might get extended a little bit further than that. I'm going to go with Vallejos second round KO in a performance where he might lose the first round just with the way that Gene Silva does fight, but then he comes back after Gene Silva slows down a little bit. The leg kicks into the body work all adds up, and I think that Vallejos is going to finish him in the second. Now we've got another short notice replacement fight. It's Chad Hanekom taking on Dylan Budka. I think this is a very interesting fight and potentially a harder fight for Chad Hanekom. Now, he was meant to take on Cam Roaston, who fights, I believe, at City Kickboxing, is an Australian that fights over at City Kickboxing, lives in New Zealand, though, fought in a lot of King of the Ring tournaments. I guess you don't really want to hear my breakdown for this fight because it's not happening, but it was very slightly edging Chad Hanekom in that matchup, and in this matchup here, I am going to edge Chad Hanekom a little bit more. I do like the fact that he has had the full camp for the matchup, and Dylan Budka, I don't think Dylan Budka is a similar matchup, but Dylan Budka, in my opinion, is a fighter that Chad Hanekom can beat. I'm pretty high on Dylan Budka. The reason why I like him is because he fights so often. He's fought 5 times in the last year and a half, but before that, man, he's just absolutely fighting all the time. He's a very active fighter. He's a guy that if he was in the UFC would love him because he would take short notice fights and just fight, honestly, probably like once a month or something ridiculous, but I'd like Chad Hanekom in this fight. Now, Dylan Budka is also a wrestler because Chad Hanekom is a wrestler for the most part. He does possess some insane KO power on the feet. He's got an insane KO over NJ La, which he managed to get kind of coming out of the clinch. But for the most part, what Chad Hanekom is doing is he is going for takedowns quite often and then working from top position from there. But Dylan Budka is also a wrestler. He took on a pretty tough opponent in Azamat Bikoev. I do recommend that maybe you watch that fight. Not because it's a good fight, because in my opinion the fight was pretty boring, and I'm going to be honest as well. Another thing is, I actually picked Dylan Budka to win that fight, and the reason why I picked Dylan Budka to win this fight is because I did not think that Azamat Bikoev was good whatsoever, and after watching the fight for a second time, because I did watch it live, I can confirm that Azamat Bikoev is nowhere near as good as his record suggests. Dylan Budka made Bikoev look bad, which is probably a pretty good thing, but he did lose the fight. Since then, he kind of beat just a guy that wasn't too good at heavyweight, weighed in at 207 pounds for that matchup. Dylan Budka, he's a wrestler, he's a striker, but Chad Hanekom, I think Chad Hanekom has the power. He does look a little bit lost on the feet at sometimes. Maybe you could make an argument that Budka is going to be the better striker, but Hanekom is much bigger than him. He's going to be 6'4". He's going to be going for takedowns quite often. I do believe he gets them as well. I think he does beat Budka in this matchup. So give me Hanekom to win this fight. The fight was announced today, actually. But I do believe that Hanekom gets it done. Now we can move on to Serhiy Sidey taking on Ramon Taveras. I do apologize if I'm saying Serhiy's surname incorrectly, but this is a matchup Serhiy Sidey should be able to win. He is going to be the better wrestler and grappler for sure in this matchup. One thing I'm going to mention about Ramon Taveras is this guy's promotion that he fights for is a little bit sketchy because I cannot find this guy's loss anywhere. I wanted to watch his loss against Edward Massey, just see if he got taken down and caught with something or if he just got caught by a shot or something. And he also had a decision that I couldn't find as well. So all I can really find on Ramon Taveras is fights where he's just dominating everybody, which is all cool and all, and I can tell you what he does good, but the problem is I can't really tell you what he does badly because this guy is at promotion. Combat Night Pro is not posting his bad performances, and I do believe that is something that they do for a lot of their stars or the prospects that they want to build up going into the UFC. I do believe Serhiy Sidey can win this one though. Ramon Taveras is a boxer, and it's kind of it to my understanding. He does throw a lot of body kicks, and he does go to the body a lot as well, which is kind of one of the best things that he does. His boxing is very slick, but the problem is his boxing is quite good, but his hands are quite low. And Serhiy Sidey on the feet is actually quite a technical and tricky striker to deal with because he does have a Muay Thai striking style. But what is Serhiy Sidey going to be much better than Ramon Taveras at is wrestling and grappling. I do believe that if Serhiy Sidey did try and wrestle and grapple in this matchup, he would have a lot of success. I don't know how good Ramon Taveras wrestling and grappling really is because you don't really see it. He just kind of goes out there and knocks out his opponent and looks really good doing it. Kind of is the point of his promotion, just to try and build him up really. But I do believe on the feet, Serhiy Sidey should be able to make things tricky and difficult for Ramon Taveras. But if Sidey decided to wrestle and grapple, which is what I think he should do, I think he could dominate this matchup against Ramon. I'm going to go with Sidey to win by submission. A lot of people on the KO. I'm going to go with submission. I'm going to go a little bit different. I think that Sidey, if he wanted to, which I think he probably should, go for a submission. I think he could get a submission pretty early on. I think he's going to be the much better grappler than Ramon Taveras in this matchup. So give me Sidey to get it done in that way. Now we move on to the main event. Bruno Lopes taking on Brendson Ribeiro. Bruno Lopes is going to be a huge favorite in this matchup, like a massive favorite. Lopes is really good. Now there's not a lot of tape on Bruno Lopes, and there is red flags kind of up and around there, just kind of about his career. I haven't been able to get a definitive answer why, but he did take 6 years off between 2015 and 2021. But it is worth noting he was kind of fighting at 170 and I believe 185 around that period of time, and he just bulked up and then fought at 205 pounds after that. And now fighting at 205 pounds, he has looked really good. He's a very technical light heavyweight. He's got grappling, he's got wrestling, he's got striking. I think he's going to be better everywhere than Brendson Ribeiro. I was watching Brendson Ribeiro's fight, and although he wins, he doesn't look good in wins. He took on this guy, João Paulo Fagundes, and this guy rocked him 30 seconds into the first round. We saw him in a lot of trouble, and then João Paulo just gassed out completely in round number 1, and we were able to see Brendson Ribeiro take over. That's a good win to have, but he was still hurt. He was still rocked a little bit. We see this guy get KO'd as well. He's been KO'd twice in his career, recently as well. Marcio Bruno knocked him out in the first round. David Bakdurian knocked him out in the first round, in the first minute of the fight pretty much. Bruno Lopes is going to be the better striker against a guy that has bad striking defense. Another thing is Brendson Ribeiro's got bad takedown defense. If Bruno Lopes wanted to submit Brendson Ribeiro in round number 1, he could go out there and do it. If he wanted to knock out Brendson Ribeiro in round number 1, he could go out there and do it. This could age really badly because I'm building up Bruno Lopes to be like the next Yuri Prochazka. And I do believe that he's not going to be the next Yuri Prochazka. But I do believe he is really, really good. And I do believe he's better than Brendson Ribeiro, who has bad striking defense, who has bad takedown defense. I'm going to go with Bruno Lopes to win this fight by round 1 finish. I don't really want to put a stamp on KO or sub because if Bruno Lopes wanted to wrestle and grapple, he would submit Brendson Ribeiro in round number 1. But if he wanted to knock him out, he could do that as well. Knockout is probably more likely, to be fair. But I'm going to go Bruno Lopes to finish this fight in the very first round. I think he's going to be a massive, massive favorite, but I do believe he gets it done. Takes out Brendson Ribeiro. This is a matchup the UFC has kind of put together to make Bruno Lopes looks good. I understand why he is 11-0 at light heavyweight. You don't see that too often. He's a great prospect. He's going to be 12-0 if he wins the fight. I mean, come on, man. And Dana White even said they want to sign more guys from Brazil so they can put more Brazilians to debut on that UFC Sao Paulo card, I believe, in November. So let's see, maybe Bruno Lopes makes his debut before the end of the year. I would be very happy if that was so, but he's got to win this fight first. And now with all that being said, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.